To the millions of people who have been entertained and inspired by Magnificent Obsession, White Banners, Disputed Passage, The Robe, and other famous books by Lloyd C. Douglas, we respectfully submit this series.
One of the perennial problems confronting doctors and hospitals is the malingerer, the patient who, for one reason or another, feigns an illness to gain admission to the hospital, or once there to prolong hospitalization far beyond a reasonable date of discharge. Many of these malingerers are extremely skilled in the art of deception and difficult to detect. Medical proof of their malingering poses an even more difficult problem. I'm reminded of one of my first experiences with this sort of thing in my early days at Center Hospital.
Here you are, Craven. Sucked yourself a celebrity this time.
Thomas Parmenter. By me, that don't spell celebrity, chum.
What's the matter? You don't read newspapers?
I have enough of my own troubles without reading about other people's. Who was the guy?
Merely the only son and sole heir of the wealthy San Francisco shipping family. Ah, you must have read about the Parmenters.
Well, if you say I must have, I guess I must have. What's he doing here in Center City?
Following Dixie and the band.
Come again?
Dixie Dabney, top singer with Red Harley and the Dixiecrats. Hey, are you pulling my leg, Cravens?
How should I know from this kind of stuff?
Man, what are you, a long hair?
Lay off me, will you, man? He's out cold. I got work to do.
Well, I'll fill you in. A couple of weeks ago, the kid here and Dixie eloped, and the old man disowned him. It made the front pages of the paper all over the country.
How long has he been out?
About an hour, close as we can figure.
I think we better get him up to the 4th floor right away. I'd like to have Dr. Hudson take a look at him. I don't like his respiration one bit.
You know something, Cravens? This kid conks out. Dixie will wind up with that whole bloomin' snooty Parmenter shipping fortune.
You know, you ought to quit medicine and start cultivating her. Tacky? Craven's in receiving. Shooting up a coma case. 4th floor. Put him in room 415. Parmenter. Thomas Parmenter. Check. Now, give me a quick switch to Dr. Hudson. If he isn't in his office, will you page him? I'll hang on. Right.
I can't make head or tail to this case.
There's not even a shadow on these plates.
That's just it. We haven't turned up a solitary thing in any department.
What about that respiration?
It's the first thing I noticed when I brought him into receiving. I didn't even dare send him to X-ray until Dr. Hudson had a look.
There's absolutely nothing in the boy's physical condition to account for either his respiration or that deep coma. No sign of a contusion. Reflexes are normal. Temperature, circulation, blood pressure normal. In the confines of this room, I must confess I'm absolutely baffled.
Perhaps the suddenness of the fall threw him into shock.
I've considered it. He's not in shock. Not with a normal pulse rate and blood pressure. Look at his color. No alcohol, no barbiturates.
That boy's got a build like an athlete's. I mean, a little fall like that. I checked with the auditorium. It's just a 5-foot drop from the stage to the floor. He couldn't have done that much damage.
It could have. Depends, of course, on how he hit. The point is, there's no visible sign of any damage. And with x-rays and spinal taps and reflexes, we'd have had an indication somewhere if there was.
Should we shoot him through for another set of pictures?
Well, I guess we'd better, just to be on the safe side. And I don't want that boy left alone for a minute.
Oh, a nurse has been in constant attendance since his arrival.
You have oxygen standing by in case of emergency?
Yes, sir. I couldn't take any chances with a respiratory pattern like that.
Well, what about next of kin? We may have to get permission to operate.
Oh, I wired the boy's father in San Francisco. I also put in a call for his wife. This could be she. Yes, Tacky. Oh, just a moment. Mrs. Parmenter is here. Do you want to talk to her?
Yes, have her come in.
Please send her in, Tacky. You probably want to see her alone, so...
Oh, Ann, why don't you stay? Craven's better accompany the boy down to X-ray.
Yes, sir. I'll stick right by him.
You Dr. Hudson?
No, ma'am.
He's in there.
Well, you're Dr. Hudson.
That's right. Come in. This is Miss Talbot, our chief surgical nurse.
Pleased to meet you. Dr. Hudson, what's all this think about my husband? I was at the beauty parlor. You have no idea how much time can be taken up with that sort of thing unless you was in the profession. Anyway, by the time I got to rehearsal, I was late, of course, the boys were afraid to tell me what happened.
Afraid?
Yes. You know how it is. We're doing our closing show here tonight, and we're supposed to take off for California on a 3 o'clock plane in the morning. Paramount's making a screen test of us day after tomorrow for a great big musical. I'm to be featured. I guess the boys didn't want to upset me. Anyway, I just didn't know a thing about what happened until somebody from here called and dropped the bomb.
Oh, that was me.
Thanks a million. Where's all this going to leave me? That's all I want to know.
Well, we're very worried about your husband's condition.
They told me he fell off the stage and landed on his cocoa. Is that right?
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
Of all the stupid, uncalled-for things to happen. Who asked him to keep us around rehearsal anyway? The boys and me are knocking ourselves out, working up new routines and goosing up the old ones. And what's he doing? Rubbernecking. Serves me right for running off and eloping with a bug-eyed college kid, still not dry behind the ears. Even if he was one of them blue-blooded parmenters from San Francisco. A lot of good that blue blood does him now. Would you believe it? His old man disowned him when he married me. Old stinker. All his kid's been doing ever since we got hitched is to hit me up for measly $10 handouts now and then. We was married in Las Vegas, and Tommy boy lost his whole wad at the crap table the very first night. I've never seen a guy roll so many snake eyes in my life. Then Mr. Snooty Pants tries to cash a check to stage a comeback. Naturally, the casino phones his old man in Frisco to make sure the check doesn't bounce. That's how the old so-and-so found out where we was. And stopped Tommy's credit. And he's been busted ever since.
Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Parmenter, but...
Would you mind calling me by my own name? Both of you. Dixie Dabney I'm known as professionally. This Mrs. Parmenter's beginning to give me the willies. Just Dixie. Short, sweet, and full of beans. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
You were about to say something, Doctor, when I so rudely interrupted.
Well, merely that your husband is still in a coma. It may become necessary to operate. In that case, we'll have to have your signed authorization as next of kin.
Trying to find a sucker to stick with the bill, huh?
Now, look here, Mrs. Parmenter.
Oh, Dixie, remember?
Hospitals do not run on air. If you're a charity patient, and I assure you we do our share of that.
Well, look, Dr. Hudson, my husband's old man is one of the richest men in America. You get a hold of him and done him. Why pick on little old me?
If your husband's father has disowned him, then it's strictly up to you.
Well, let him repossess him. They do it with furniture and radios when people can't pay. He can just do it with his son.
Well, I wired Mr. Parmenter in San Francisco several hours ago.
Did you give it to him straight? You have to really lay it on for some of those old birds. They're so crabby with a dollar, you have to scrape the you-know-what off of them like barnacles.
Well, I explained what had happened, as well as his son's present condition.
Well, then don't you worry. You'll hear from the old buzzard. Blood's thicker than water, even if he don't approve of me. Well, if Sonny Boy's still sleepy by, I can't be doing much good around here. Guess I'll go over and do a little swinging with the boys. We're whipping up a brand new arrangement to knock those Paramount moguls dead when we get out to the coast. I'll give you a ring later on and see what's happening. And if Rover Boy comes too, maybe I'll even get a chance to come by and give him a quick bye-bye.
You're still planning on leaving for the coast tonight?
Are you kidding, Doc? Well, this is the opportunity of my lifetime. Well, look what happened to Betty Hutton. She used to sing with a band. Look what Paramount did for her.
I wonder if you understand how really concerned we are about your husband's condition.
Oh, I do, and I think it's just swell of you. I'm sure he couldn't be in better hands. Well, I'll phone you later on. Bye-bye.
Well, that was illuminating, to say the least.
Aren't you glad I never went in for show business?
I'm sure those Paramount moguls are sitting there with their tongues hanging out.
Oh, I don't know. I used to act in our high school plays, and I wasn't so bad.
So bad as who?
Whom?
The crazy girl's got us all off base.
Would you believe it, Doctor? We ran another set of cranial x-rays. Came out just the same as the first ones. Clean as a whistle.
That was pretty fast shooting.
I looked at them in the soup. No point even waiting for them to dry.
Well, I guess that disposes of concussion.
You know something funny, Doctor? I could swear I saw that boy's eyes open, just for a second, taking in the room. Then they closed again.
It's very interesting. It ties in with something that's been brushing the edges of my thinking.
Does Dixie Dabney have anything to offer?
Something wrong with your eyes?
Miss Talbot's in a flippant mood this morning.
Nothing compared to Dixie. Yes, Tacky. Oh, one moment. They just phoned in an answer to my wire to Mr. Parmenter in San Francisco. Do you want it now?
Of course.
Okay, Tacky, let's have it. 3 words? What are they? I see. That's all? Okay, thanks.
Well, what did he say?
3 words. Are you kidding? Signed, Parmenter.
What did you wire him?
Well, just that his son was on the danger list from a fall on his head, in a coma, all the rest of it. I even asked him to wire his authorization for surgery in case of an emergency.
It's my hunch that between him and Dixie, Center Hospital is going to be left holding the bag on Mr. Thomas Parmenter.
Not if I have anything to say about it. If you want me, I'll be in Dr. Means' office.
Fourth floor. One moment, please. Go ahead, operator. Your party's on the wire.
Tacky, have you seen the afternoon paper?
I have a few things to do other than read the newspapers when I'm on duty.
Anyway, you should ask to be transferred to ambulance service. Then you know what's going on in the world. Wow, pipe that chassis.
Did your mind always have to be in the gutter?
You call that gutter?
Dixie Dabney? Well, I was talking to her myself in person just a couple of hours ago. What's it say about her?
End of honeymoon. Millionaire playboy husband of Dixie Dabney lands in hospital. I love that Dixie blowing out to the coast for a screen test and leaving her husband here in a coma.
Well, after all, the show must go on. And you don't get a chance to make a screen test every day.
Oh, I guess so. You can always pick up a new husband.
Tacky, would you get hold of that reporter friend of Dr. Hudson's down at the Chronicle? Tell him I'm calling for Dr. Hudson.
I'll get him immediately, Anne.
Well, I see you're keeping up with the international news.
Oh, so strictly local stuff, like, what are you doing tonight?
Cultivating my mind. But I'm sure that wouldn't be of any interest to you.
It all depends on what we might do afterward.
I've got the Chronicle, Anne.
I'll take it in Dr. Hudson's office. Well, as you know, we have a patient, Thomas Parmenter, who seems to be pretty hot copy for you boys at the moment. No, his condition's still unchanged. Now, what Dr. Hudson would like from you is a complete dossier on Parmenter. Whatever you have on him in the morgue. Could you give it to us? Oh, wonderful. I'll take it down in shorthand right over the phone. It'll at least give us the pertinent facts in his case history. Well, I'm ready. Go right ahead.
You know as well as I do, Wayne. Malingering is a pretty serious offense.
Only if there's an intent to defraud.
I admit there can be no fraud in a legal sense without moral fraud.
Of course. As the authorities put it, if the deception is perpetrated without prospect of gain, then all it constitutes is morbid symptom and cannot in any manner or means be described as legal malingering.
Mr. Daggett has certainly drummed that point into us often enough.
Now, I don't want you to assume that malingering is any definitive diagnosis of this boy's case. I've arrived at it as a possibility only as a result of the complete failure of our clinical tests to substantiate his symptoms.
Your malingerer is so often confused with your psychoneurotic. I'm sure you've given that possibility your consideration.
I've considered it. But in the light of even the few facts we have at our disposal concerning the boy's background and activities, I've ruled it out.
This laconic telegram from the boy's father presents a bit of a poser. Are you kidding? Signed, Parmenter.
I have a feeling this is not the first time the old boy's been subjected to this sort of thing.
What about the boy's wife? She been any help to you?
Well, I'm afraid Dixie's more concerned with her own career than she is with her husband's health. As a matter of fact, I have a feeling that Dixie in some way is in back of this whole business.
I have the dossier on young Parmenter.
We're just discussing the Parmenter case, Anne. You may be able to shed a little light on it.
Well, I haven't had time to transcribe my notes, but I do feel there are several things I ought to call to your attention immediately.
Well, let's have them. I have a feeling we're beginning to close in on this case.
Well, first of all, the boy is anything but the millionaire playboy character the newspapers have carved him out to be. He was graduated from Stanford last year, Phi Beta Kappa, and was captain of the university gymnastics team.
Gymnastics, huh?
He also was tumbling champion of the Pacific Coast Conference 2 years in a row.
By George, that's really extraordinary.
Yes, it's even more extraordinary when an ex-tumbling champ takes a little 5-foot fall and winds up in a hospital in a coma.
Huh? Yes. Yes, I see what you mean.
Dr. Means, with your permission, I think I know a way to expose this young man.
Oh, sorry to barge in like this. Something terrible has just happened. It's been all my fault. The coma case at 415, Thomas Parmenter.
Now what?
He fell out of bed.
He what?
He fell out of bed and he landed right on his head again.
Good grief.
Well, where was the nurse?
I let her out on a coffee break.
Do you mean to tell me that boy was left unattended?
No, sir. I was there with him all the time.
I don't understand. Then how did he fall out of bed?
Well, I was over at the window with my back to him, going over his chart. I hear this thud. I turn around. There he is on the floor in a heap.
Good grief. You realize, Doctor, that the hospital could be vulnerable under the circumstances to a lawsuit for negligence?
Well, I doubt very much whether there's any question of lawsuit here, Doctor.
Inasmuch as the responsibility for this sort of thing is in my lap, Wayne, you'll excuse me if my composure doesn't quite match yours.
Cravens, let me ask you and Ann a couple of questions. Has either one of you ever heard of a coma case falling out of bed?
Come to think of it, I never have, no.
Neither have I.
I'm sure that neither Dr. Means nor I have either. That young man didn't fall out of bed. He threw himself out.
How could he throw himself out? He was in a coma.
Exactly. It's my contention that he wasn't in a coma at all and never has been.
Wait a minute. Now, wait a second. The only chance he'd have to throw himself out of bed was in that split minute when my back was to him at the window.
Of course. He was watching for that opportunity every second. I tell you, Dr. Means, it's absolutely predictable in these malingering cases. Sooner or later, they can be counted on to overplay their hand.
You mean there's nothing wrong with the guy?
Have you been able to find anything wrong with him?
Well, he's in a coma. I mean, his respiration had me bothered there for a while.
Coma and respiration. Actually, the only two evidences of anything wrong with the boy at all. And incidentally, the two easiest symptoms to simulate.
Seems to me we're in a most peculiar position here, Wayne. How do you propose to handle it?
Ann, I want that nurse removed from young Parmenter's room immediately.
Yes, Doctor.
No one is to go near that room under any circumstances. We'll let him stew in his own juice for a bit. You mark my words, within 2 hours, he'll come out of that coma. Especially when he finds out that nobody has paid the slightest bit of attention to that last fall out of bed.
It's okay by me.
And get hold of Parmenter's wife and tell her to come over here again about 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
We should be ready for a showdown by then.
Well, I guess you won't need me any longer, huh?
Don't give the case another thought, Cravens.
Thank you, Doctor.
Well, I certainly hope you're doing the right thing here, Wayne.
Well, if I had any doubts before, this last act of falling out of bed has been the clincher. Well, incidentally, if you've nothing better to do, why don't you drop around to 415 at 4? It might be revealing.
Room 415 at 4.
Right. I'll see you then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, young man, how are you feeling?
Where am I?
Well, you're not at the Stanford gym, even though you have been up to your old tricks again.
What do you mean, tricks?
Tumbling. You told me you were the top tumbler in the Pacific Coast Conference 2 years in a row.
So what?
So you don't take a little 5-foot fall from a stage without breaking it. Not with your kind of trained reflex.
What are you trying to say?
Well, just simply that there's nothing so unconvincing as overacting.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yes, you do. I found out a few other facts about you, too. You made Phi Beta Kappa out there at Stanford. At least we could call you as bright.
Say, who are you anyway?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Dr. Hudson, Wayne Hudson, Chief of Neurology and Neurosurgery at Center Hospital.
Center Hospital?
That's where you are. You were brought here in an ambulance after you took that fall from the stage at the Biltmore Auditorium.
Yeah. I'm beginning to remember.
Well, there you go, overacting again.
Say, what is this with you?
Now, look here, young man. You had us fooled for a couple of hours with that simulated coma and that cleverly articulated respiratory failing. But unfortunately, in the science of medicine, we can't accept an effect without a cause. And since our tests proved negative all down the line, we had only one conclusion to draw.
You think you're pretty clever, don't you?
I can assure you, Tom, this is just a routine ABC run-of-the-mill diagnosis.
What's your next move? Call the cops?
I've done better than that. I've called your wife.
Oh, no. Did you have to do that?
Look here, Tom, you're in a bit of a jam, aren't you?
What makes you think that?
All this exaggerated Falderall, taking that fall to pretend concussion, simulating coma to stay in the hospital. That's doing things the hard way, isn't it?
Maybe it is. I didn't know how else to get out of getting on that plane tonight for Hollywood.
I take it you consider your marriage a mistake.
I must have been out of my mind.
Well, we all do foolish things sometime or other in life. You're lucky you got yours behind you when you're still young, before you've really got started.
Dad was so right. What he said to me, have your fling, son. I don't approve, but you've a right to your own decisions. Go ahead if you want to, but you're on your own, financially and every other way. If you can do something I do approve, I'll back my judgment to the hilt.
Well, he sounds like a very sensible man.
He's a great old guy.
Any chance of you two getting together again?
Until I get out of this mess.
How do you propose getting out of it?
If you'd let me stay here overnight, till Dixie and the band hop that plane for Hollywood, I think I'll be out of the woods.
Oh, I think we might arrange that.
Do you really?
Our job is to help sick people get well. Anybody who's gone to lengths you have couldn't exactly be called hale or hearty. Well, incidentally, your wife is standing by in my office. Don't you think it'd be a good idea to see her and get it over with?
On one condition.
Oh?
That you don't leave her alone with me.
Well, I think that could be arranged. Tacky, would you send Mrs. Parmenter in here, please? Parmenter. She's in my office. Yes, that's right. Dixie Dabney.
Is everything all right in here, gentlemen?
Oh, we're getting along famously, Dr. Means. 100%.
100%, eh? Well, I must say, Hudson, I'm very much relieved to hear that. Carry on.
Excuse me. Well, how you feeling, stupid?
Hello, Dixie.
I ask you, Doc, what kind of a man let himself get in for this kind of jam session? I ask you.
Well, accidents will happen even in the best of families.
Well, so at least you get yourself run over by a fancy automobile. But what kind of a jerk does it take to fall off a stage? And he ain't even working on it.
Are you still going off to Hollywood tonight, Dixie?
You're darn tootin' I'm off to Hollywood. What do you want me to do, stay here and hold your hands?
I'm afraid, Dixie, I'm just going to be a drag on you.
Oh, no, you're not. Don't kid yourself. From now on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. And if you think I'm going to foot the bill for operations and hospitalizations and all this other nonsense, you've got another thing coming. Done, your old man. He's got more than he'll ever take with him. Or join the Blue Cross. Anyway, I'm not bailing you out any more.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn out all you expected, Dixie.
Who's got time to be sorry? Here today, gone tomorrow. What's the diff? Anyway, I'm late to rehearsal.
I hope you kill 'em dead out there in Hollywood, Dixie.
Well, if they're too stupid to appreciate us, it'll be their loss. Well, I'll be seeing you. Take good care of him, Doc.
So long, Dixie. I don't know how I'm ever going to thank you, Doctor.
Why bother? I'm glad it turned out all right.
Mind if I put in a call to San Francisco? Collect?
No, go ahead.
I'd like to put in a long-distance person-to-person call collect to San Francisco, please. I want to speak to John Parmenter at Sutter 43201. This is his son, Thomas Parmenter, calling. Right, I'll hold.
You think he'll accept the charges?
I called him. He knows I'm throwing in the towel. I can stop in Reno on my way back, get my divorce, and then on to San Francisco and... Oh, Dad? Tom. Fine. Say, Dad, I don't suppose you have any kind of job in that shipping outfit of yours, have you? For an ambitious young man? What? I can't hear you. I could
start in 6 weeks. I can't. I have a date in Reno first. With a lawyer. Sure. Well, that's wonderful, Dad. By the way, why don't you come up to Reno for a bit? Maybe we could sit it out together. Well, great. Well, I'll be talking to you.